Can we switch this over to Tiger King?
We can.
Tiger King Joe Exotic became a household name after crashing into the American psyche in March in the Netflix. Everybody was talking about it.
I know.
First of all,
how did I get involved?
How did you get involved in this?
I literally would never have watched it. I didn't even subscribe to Netflix, but I had a good friend of mine say you have to watch it. So I watched it. Episode 1 was a train wreck. And I thought...
That's an understatement.
Oh, yeah. And I thought, surely the next episode can't be any worse. And it was. And then came episode 3. And it started with the words, you 20-year-old murder cases can't be solved.
Ooh. Challenge.
Exactly. That's what got me. That's what got me. So that whole episode was about a cold case, and of course I've done a few of those.
So what was the end results of this, as far as you taking this up and investigating?
Well, I've been looking at it since it aired, and I've had help from some researchers and stuff, and so we have a piece that will hopefully be coming out next week. I think it's like 24,000 words.
A piece with 24,000 words as far as the investigation. Did you arrive at any conclusion that you can't mention here yet? But...
Well, no, I can talk a little bit about it. One is I've let some lawyers, like prosecutor types, read it, and they feel like there's enough to basically, have a grand jury investigate. I think that
would exonerate. This has nothing to do with the hitman that.
No, this
reason Joe's.
It doesn't have anything to do with Joe. It has to do with Carole. Carole.
Whether
Carole
she killed her
Baskin's,
husband or not.
Yeah, Carole Baskin's husband disappeared on August 18th.
Yeah.
1997.
She's not been charged with this at all.
No,
anything.
No, not at all.
The main player,
and she feels very confident that she'll.
Have you talked to her?
My researcher had extended conversations with her.
Just Perez, I don't think you and I talked about it. I don't think, Perez, you watched any of that. Any of it? Did you watch even one?
No.
Because you watched the first one, and then you either got to get therapy, take an extra long shower, or something before you watched.
Like I said, it was a train wreck. It was a train wreck, and then episode 2 was even worse train wreck.
Did some of the main players on here, of course, Exotic Joe himself.
Yeah,
update on him.
I didn't really write about Joe. He's still in prison. He's trying to get out. He tried to get Trump to pardon him, and Trump didn't. And I think he's still working on that. He's going to be in there for a while.
Where's the zoo now? His zoo is it closed down?
It's closed now.
Does she have
Thank
all
God.
the animals in her place? And where is her place?
Her place is in Tampa.
So it is in Florida. Mm-hmm. And does she have those animals now, or do we know?
Trying to, I think some of those animals got divided up, but basically, and of course, it was awful. It was just an awful situation. Jeff Lowe had taken over that zoo, and I just
I
saw some of the photos and videos of some of those animals. It was awful, and they died, and it was just a bad situation.
I didn't realize we had this many of these places around.
There's tons of these kind of roadside
he said at one point, and I was doing some research on this. He said at one point he is developing the world's greatest new park out there somewhere.
Oh, Jeff Lowe?
I think that's what he said.
Oh my, yeah, and I don't know. It strikes me there are some people maybe that don't need to go into that business. There's not like it's not like you qualify. It's not like a doctor opening up a clinic or something.
On a 50-50 basis, 50% that you don't know if she did her husband in or not. What's your percentage after your investigation?
Well, I think what it points out would be her behavior after her husband disappeared would tend to point toward that she knew he was gone for good.
So what does that mean?
Well, I think it means something. It was something for authorities to look at, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many things in the weeds on it. But I think in general, her alibi, for example, her alibi entry online has changed repeatedly. just different things like that raise questions. For
Do you
certain.
think what you've done will reopen that investigation into her? Or?
I don't know. We'll see. But that's I guess I just view my job as just to try to tell the truth.
Now, when is it? It's the new season starts next month.
November 17th.
November 17th.
Yeah.
Your piece comes out when?
Next week.
So it'll be there for consumption before this. What do you think there will be any answers that people are asking about this that will be unveiled in the new season?
Yeah, I hope so.
Such as?
Well, we talk about, there were these Don's guns, for example, that suddenly wound up in the hands.
Don Lewis?
Don Lewis, her husband, he had a huge gun collection. It wound up in the hands of someone who worked for them. And there's this whole long thing, his name's Kenny Farr, and he originally, he kept changing his story about the guns. He originally said, Don gave him the guns, and then he changed it over and said, no, Carole gave him the guns, and then Carol's changed her story. So and then all of a sudden, it's supposedly he was getting these guns for moving a house, and anyway, it's according to Kenny's ex, which those guns arrived before Don was declared missing.
And Joe's had a couple. He's apparently gay, and he's had a couple of husbands out there. One of the husbands just committed suicide. Did they?
Well, one of them in the show committed suicide. Yeah, committed suicide. Yeah, it was awful.
And one of them wasn't gay.
I guess so. I don't know. It's the Joe Exotic side of this equation, I've not been so inclined to cover every detail of. But he is in prison, and not just for attempting to kill Carole Baskin, but also he killed 5 tigers. So I think some people forget about that.
Do you have some tax issues too? One of them had tax issues. I'm not sure who it was, but. I
think he did. I think he had some tax
Now,
issues.
Speaking of legality, didn't Carole Baskin try to stop the show? Didn't she file?
Yeah, she said that tried to stop Tiger King 2 from airing, saying
coming up next month.
Yeah, which will November 17th. So basically saying that she didn't give them permission to use it for a second season.
Wondering legally would they have to, because they could do it without her.
Most of the time, as someone who's done these interviews for documentaries, most of the time when you sign those things, they say it's pretty much in perpetuity. You know what I mean? Whenever you're basically signing away you're basically giving them all the rights to those interviews.
Did you ask and try to figure out who burned down Joe's studio?
Again, the Joe side of the equation, I just didn't really deal with. I guess, again, my focus was kind of on the cold case in this story.
If he is gone, do you think probably the cleanest way to do this is feed it to the tigers, or do you think he's buried?
Don?
Yeah, you
Don,
think he's?
I've the way I kind of think of it is this, and assuming Don was killed. Florida's a murderer's paradise. And so take your pick. Swamp, ocean, gators, sharks, whatever. You know what I mean? You've got plenty of ways to dispose of bodies in Florida.
You got to wonder how many jockeys haven't been eaten by pythons.
Maybe so.
We can do this in the final segment when we come up in a moment or two. If you don't mind, can you hang on for a second? We'll talk about that with other places. We're sitting here talking to Jerry Mitchell about the second season here, and the question I have, if Exotic's in jail, Carolyn doesn't want to be a part of it, the zoo is closed, what are we doing? Who's watching what? Is it going to be, about them? Or is it
a lot of things have happened, on the animal side since Tiger King 1 aired. So, I mean, again, Jeff Lowe is, basically that zoo's abandoned. He basically sold it to Carole. So that all that happened, and there were animals that died. It was a bad situation. So the current status, is she the only one who's got? Well, there are a lot of these zoos around. I mean, they could actually bring in some other players, new players. Yeah, I think
They could go to Collins, Mississippi, and see.
I don't know anything about that facility.
I don't even know if that one's still open as far as that one's concerned. I'm interested. Could I ask you a couple of more questions about this documentary that you're doing? So, talk to me again about that.
Well, so it's kind of the story of this. So basically, this case involves a woman who's in prison for life. Mm-hmm. And what happened was she was, I think 31 years old and when this happened, and her younger sister was dating this young man, and they broke up. And, they were like, talking about marriage, and, I can't remember if they were engaged at that moment in time or not. But anyway, he comes and knocks on her bedroom window. I mean, this is all part of the same family property. She's living in a trailer, and asks for a gun, and says he only needs one bullet. He's trying to kill a raccoon, and she's like, well, you'll need more than one bullet, So she loads her little .22 pistol, and gives it to him, and then. And I guess this being the country tells him, well, after you kill it, let me see it. So goes off and hears the shot, and the guy never comes back. And she goes and checks, and the guy's been shot. So she calls 911. This is from her perspective.
Yeah.
And, and she's called 911 saying this is an accidental shooting, and the sheriffs get there.
Where was he shot?
In the chest.
So it was not. They determined it was not suicide.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that. So she says it's accidental. Mm-hmm. The deputies show up.
He wasn't shot in the back.
No, he wasn't shot in the back. Deputies arrive and go, well, this isn't an accidental shooting, And so
based on what? No raccoon.
Yeah. Well, and then the sheriff said, I think it was the sheriff or chief deputy told a reporter that night it was shot from 30 feet. That he was shot from 30 feet away. Well, it turned out that's not true. That it was a contact wound, which means, of course,
This is verified by the
pathologist.
And this was brought out in court proceedings.
Yeah.
And she still was convicted.
Correct. The pathologist in the case, what she said was that because the gunshot went straight back as opposed to at an angle, the argument being that if you have a gun and you're trying to shoot yourself, let's say, it would have to be at an angle. But the other part of that equation is you're assuming somebody's turning the gun around as opposed to having the gun facing you and maybe just using your thumbs, if that makes any sense. Like you could turn a gun around backwards and fire it.
Do you think it was an accident or was it self-inflicted?
I don't know. We're digging into.
What was the relationship between these two?
Well, the younger sister was dating this guy, or basically they were talking about getting married.
Was there a relationship between these two?
None that we know of. Other than they knew each other.
Why would she want to kill him?
Again, there's no. One of the things the prosecutor said in the argument was, "We don't have to prove motive."
Did she have a pretty good attorney at that time, or
no?
Well, she didn't.
No. So it's an interesting question.
So you think she may be innocent?
Yeah, we're looking at that. I think it's an interesting case to look at.
There are organizations out there that will bring some legal weight to that. Have you been in contact with them?
Well, they're involved.
They are involved?
They're involved in her case.
Are they doing this on a podcast too?
No, but I think it would make a really interesting podcast.
Why are these things, and especially women? Mm-hmm. You start looking into some of the demos of some of the podcasts, and we found that out back when we did on the one in Meridian, Culpable. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that thing just caught on like wildfire.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fascinating story, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not making a judgment one way or the other. To me, it's an interesting case.
Well, maybe we need to do that. Maybe we need to get together and do a podcast on this thing, and we'll get it started. But that is
it's a fascinating story.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And when is that going to come out? Or
well, we're working on a documentary on it, and we may do a podcast, and of course
so you are thinking about a podcast?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Good.
And then we're also obviously going to write stories, but we really want to look at some of the broader questions is the death investigation system in Mississippi.
How long has she gotten as far as her sentence is concerned?
Well, she's not eligible for parole till she's 65.
And she's how old now? 35,
well, she's 31 at the time, which was 2009.
I got you.
Yep.
It's an amazing story. Look, are you going to be doing? Do you have any invitations as far as before this happens from the network or any news services to reveal some of this information prior to the second season of Tiger?
Tampa paper I think may do something. We'll see. So yeah, we will see.
You missed the everyday